As a society, we are obsessed with cleanliness.
There's a strong germophobia in this country.
We are bombarded by advertisements showing pristine, clean places.
We've been brainwashed by manufacturers into thinking that all germs have to be killed at any cost.
But are we too clean? What is the cost of these products on our health?
Anytime there's a warning label, you really have to think about, well, why?
If exposure occurs over a long period of time, over and over again, harm can occur.
What are the potential risks for society at large?
Our bodies are more microbial than human, and we need to figure out how to live better in this world.
When you're spraying a spray onto a surface, it bounces back into the user's breathing zone and then into their body. So we want to avoid that. We want to look at other ways that we might be able to control infectious disease, because this is what it's all about. We know we need to control infectious disease, but do it in a safer manner. When we are cleaning a room or a building, we're putting chemicals into the air. And even though we have ventilation systems, they aren't able to take everything out. And also, the people using those products are exposed to whatever is in them.
Seventh generation looks at two aspects of our products. One is called its acute toxicity, and this means the ability to do immediate harm. So if a child should accidentally ingest our products, we want to minimize the risk of harm to that child. In addition, there's something called chronic toxicity. So we have another formulation rule that we will not use any material that is a known chronic toxicant as an ingredient. And occasionally those types of materials can get into our product as contaminants or byproducts of chemical reactions. When we know that's happening, we have rules to minimize the presence of those contaminants and byproducts.
Basically, any product, you go down the cleaning aisle in the grocery store and you can smell them from 2 aisles away. So they might be effective at cleaning, but they're not safe. The exposure, for instance, I know Swiffer wet jets, they have really powerful chemical cleaners involved. And if a little cat, for instance, I've heard about cats walking on a freshly cleaned floor from Swiffer wet jets and licking their paws and actually dying.
There are a lot of cleaning products that'll do, that'll cause serious skin reactions. One of the issues is that it's not always the products damaging the skin. It's the products killing the bacteria that normally live on the skin and keep homeostasis going and keep all the pathogens away, that then once those are dead, you'll get overgrowth of things that you'd rather not have on your skin. It's a lot of Staph aureus, and then you start getting skin problems from that.
Most people don't realize, but fragrances actually can be potentially harmful, whether they're natural or not. These can be very irritating to the respiratory tract. They can be sensitizing and lead to or aggravate asthma.
15 million school days are missed annually due to asthma. There's a little over 9,000 children in Vermont itself that have current asthma. So that's a big issue when you look at students being able to learn and their productivity if they're missing school days. So if we can control in the environment, and especially in the school environment, products that are being used that aren't going to trigger asthma attacks and cause these kids to be out of school for so many days, we'll have much more productive students. They'll be able to learn better.
Every product is safe when used as directed, and that's the key. So you want to use them properly because it's the safe way to use them, and you minimize the risk of harm. So people tend to ignore the back labels of products where it instructs you how to use them.
If you see use in a well-ventilated area on a label, that to me is like, ooh, that's really not a good sign. There's something about that product, because You know, you're cleaning your bathroom, if it's the middle of winter, you're not necessarily going to open the window. You know what I mean? You're not going to wear a mask.
I walked into a classroom and there was a teacher standing there with a big container about this big of disinfecting wipes. And her kids were wiping down all their desks. And they were probably third graders, I would say. Third or maybe fourth grade. And the teacher said, just remember, kids, while these wipes are really good for cleaning our desks off, you don't want to touch your face after, and make sure you go wash your hands when you're done. So it's kind of alarming if you have to give that sort of warning to your students, then it's something that shouldn't be being used by kids at all or on a regular basis.
What is dirt?
Dirt, bad.
I can't hear you.
Dirt, bad.
So it's really a cultural kind of standard that we're working against. Most people believe that they have to, kill bacteria to be healthy. And the people using the products are trying to make their families healthier too. I mean, it's coming from a good place, But they're like, we're not going to get the flu this year because I'm, Clorox wiping every surface or whatever, it's not going to help you not get the flu.
When it comes to fighting the flu virus, remember to wash your hands, get your flu shot, and use Clorox disinfecting products. Proven to kill 99.9% of tough household germs the first time. This cold and flu season, help spread protection with Clorox.
We're too clean, and that doesn't give our children enough time for their immune systems to build up a response to these things.
Kids who grow up on farms, for example, tend to have fewer allergies, food allergies, and other asthmas than kids that grow up in overly clean environments. The developing world does not have a problem with food allergies or, some of these other kind of seemingly first world problems. Our bodies evolved to live in a, not a pristine, clean environment. Our immune systems evolved to deal with this. And so so you have to find the right balance, because if it's too clean, then the immune system might get bored and start attacking itself.
There are 10 to the 29th bacteria on the planet. The next closest living thing is something like 10 to the 20th, so there are a lot of bacteria. The microbiome broadly is all the bacteria and fungi that live on a multicellular organism. So our microbiome includes our gut microbiome, our mouth microbiome, our skin microbiome, and etc. Every place you have bacteria.
When we sterilize a surface at home or use an antimicrobial hand wash, we're killing the good bacteria along with the bad. And we create an environment that is not natural and is not sustainable. So we have to learn to be much more considered in the use of these broad spectrum antimicrobials, because ultimately it's not healthy to live in a sterile world.
Sometimes I'll just kind of chuckle at a Lysol commercial where they're just, everything has to be, bacteria free. It's like, well, wait a minute. We're covered in bacteria ourselves. Like, that's impossible.
For a long time, we've got this, internal messaging from the advertising that, cleaning is good for your health. Having a clean environment, having a clean house is good for your health. So create kind of the germaphobe philosophy. With like there are germs everywhere, there are, bacteria and all kinds of things that are, disease causing that are on all of your surfaces, and you have to kill them if you want to protect your family's health. And that's, and I think this message is, you hear it from all kinds of different advertising, and it's very much reincorporated into our culture, so that most people believe it.
PG&E, Johnson & Johnson, just they're giants, and they have they have so much money behind them and power. Of course, Clorox. There are places where things do need to be sanitized. For instance, like food prep areas in schools. But I always encourage people to think outside the box even then. And okay, if you really need that particular area to be completely sanitized, then don't necessarily go for the Lysol. You don't. That's not the only way to go.
Five-second rule protection. New Lysol Kitchen Pro eliminates 99.9% of bacteria.
So conventional products are not made sustainably. They'll be made from petroleum, which is a limited resource. They may not biodegrade, which means they can accumulate in the environment. And when things start to accumulate in the environment, if they have any harmful effects, those can be magnified. And because these materials don't biodegrade, once they get into the environment, they stay there where they can cause harm. So we think it's critical that the way products are made change so that their end of life be considered. Another good example are what they call plastic microbeads. These are small pellets of plastic used in products to help remove dead, dry skin, exfoliate the skin, but they don't biodegrade. And now we're discovering that they're accumulating in our lakes and streams, that they're being ingested by fish and oysters and other sea life, so that ultimately we end up eating them, which none of us really wants to do or should want to do.
Phosphates are really bad for runoff. There are phosphates in laundry detergent and other cleaners and all kinds of products. I know that phosphates cause algae blooms, so that's really important. Whatever goes into your septic system is eventually making its way into the water table and into the environment. But also just the human health part of it and animal health part of it too is important to us. BioGreen Clean's mission is to provide an option, an alternative to sort of the common chemical cleaner that you see everywhere on the market. So our ultimate goal would be, if we could, to get BioGreen Clean into every house in this country, maybe Canada. The reason being that it's non-toxic, there are no fumes involved, no fragrances added. It's completely safe for pets and for babies to be around, for old people, for people with asthma, people with autoimmune disorders, allergies, all that kind of thing. I think it's very important to use green cleaners. I think that we don't always think about it. We may buy organic food, but then have a very unsafe cleaner under the sink. And I have kids, and I'm just always very aware of what is around them.
So most of our products are in the mid to upper 90% bio-based, and all of our ingredients must be biodegradable to be in our product. Similarly, rather than have single-use plastic that then goes to a landfill, we make sure all of the plastic we use has already been used. That is, we have high recycled content in our plastic packaging, typically 100%. And then we make sure that the form of the packaging is recyclable so that the plastic can go back into the recycling stream and be used over and over again.
Getting buy-in from child care providers and even from custodians who say, oh, I've been using these conventional products for 20 years and I'm fine, it hasn't affected my health. The way that I've dealt with that is to mention the health of the students and that it's affecting the students' health. And then most custodians really care about the kids in their building and they don't want to do anything that might harm the kids. So that helps to get them to buy into a change, because it is a change. The safer products are not as aggressive as the conventional products that are so strong that, they really do the job, but at the same time they're also doing the job on your body.
In terms of production, it's expensive. In terms of the cost of our product, it is expensive, more so than, say, you have a gallon of Simple Green and a gallon of BioGreen Clean. Of course, you're going to see a total difference. But the key is that we sell it in a concentrate form, and when you do a cost like ounce by ounce analysis, it actually, and you end up saving money in the long run. People usually don't believe that right off the bat, but people will have a gallon of this stuff for a year, and that takes out all the other cleaning products that they would have had to go buy.
There's a cost in making a greener product. Our ingredients typically cost more, so we're on shelf at a higher price. to achieve a certain level of efficacy, comparable to other premium brands, but certainly more than a value brand. So one reason for not changing is you're making a value brand, and there'll always be a consumer demand for that value brand. That could change over time as more and more companies develop efficient supply chains to deliver bio-based ingredients, but right now that's not the case.
Some of those larger companies don't feel the need to invest in a higher quality, harder to produce, more expensive to produce product because they're already doing fine with what they've got. And so the chemicals are cheaper. Bio-green clean is expensive to produce. It's a very involved process of steps, the different ingredients that go in at different times, and the ingredients themselves are such high quality that it's expensive.
It's important to keep in mind that just because something is labeled as green doesn't necessarily mean that it's safe for health and the environment. There aren't tons of regulations or standards for what a company has to meet to put those kind of labels on their product. So it's important to look for logos like the EPA Safer Choice or Green Seal. So those third-party certifications is a key to know, okay, yes, this product really is safe for health and the environment.
You do see companies making claims, though generally companies are pretty careful about what they say. However, you often see what I'll call pushing the boundaries by companies. And one thing consumers should demand is a list of the ingredients in the product on the label so they know what they're buying then and there.
The problem is when we say natural products, that's where the greenwashing comes in. So everybody, all the manufacturers realize that green sells, and so they want to make sure somewhere in their advertising it says green or natural or all of that. Nobody's really paying attention. There are some regulations around language that you can use, but there aren't nearly enough people in that department to enforce the regulations. And so there's a lot of greenwashing out there. Everybody's got that on their label or in their promotional materials.
As far as greenwashing, I think that companies do get away with, Clorox Green Works, for instance. It's really not green, or Simple Green that's been around for a long time. There's nothing green about it, I say, except for the color.
So the Envision program was created out of Act 125 in 2000, and that was to help promote safer, healthier schools. It has a lot to do with indoor air quality, chemicals, either from the lab or from cleaning supplies, asthma triggers, dust, all those kinds of things. And one of the things that we do is go into schools and do walkthroughs and help them identify things that could be contributing to poor indoor air quality and help them come up with solutions on how to fix it. There's times when disinfecting wipes or disinfectants in general should be used. High-risk areas like bathrooms, cafeterias, kitchens, high touch points like doorknobs, water fountains, things like that. But for general, everyday classroom cleaning, they're not needed. When I go into schools, I have a list of things that I'm looking for, and we seemed to be finding pretty much in every single classroom that I was going into disinfecting wipes. Disinfectants in general are not something that is certified by a third party as being environmentally preferable, so safer for health and the environment. Currently there's no organization that does that for disinfectants, but they do for general cleaners. And in general, schools, as a result of the green cleaning law that came about in 2012, are only allowed to be sold by the manufacturer and distributor of chemicals that are either on a state-approved contract or chemicals that are certified by a third party like EPA Safer Choice or Green Seal as being environmentally preferable.
Well, there is no regulation really on cleaning products. The EPA Office of Pesticide Programs does regulate disinfectants and sanitizers, but they regulate it as to what it kills, and they look somewhat at the health effects, but of course not as rigorously as we would hope that they do.
Antibiotics are specifically targeted against bacteria. Antimicrobials, one could argue, is a more general class that targets viruses, fungi, and bacteria. Although in most cases, antimicrobial is often used synonymously with antibiotic. Antibiotics are the foundation of modern medicine. Life in the pre-antibiotic era, I mean, people could certainly live a long life, but the risk of dying from infection becomes very high. A simple cut could kill you. Without them, many of the treatments that we take for granted, like elective surgeries, cancer chemotherapies, immunosuppressive therapies for autoimmune diseases, would become too risky to do because the chance for infection would become so high. Death rates from various diseases like diabetes that generally suppress the immune system would become much more deadly. Many more people would die from infections if antibiotics were no longer effective. So it's a big deal.
Before penicillin was even proved to treat people, they found penicillin-resistant organisms because penicillin is produced by a bacterium that tries to kill its competitors with penicillin. And so there were already bacteria in the soil that had been exposed to that bacterium that were resistant. And so every compound that we've had that's been natural, there are pre-existing resistance. There's two ways they can become resistant. So one is they're intrinsically resistant. And so we got to remember that almost all the antibiotics that we use and the antibacterial compounds are derived from natural compounds. And bacteria have been fighting against each other with antibiotics for like 2-3 billion years. Sort of medically problematic is the acquired resistance. So this is where a plasmid or a piece of DNA gets moved between bacteria that encodes a gene that causes resistance to a specific antibiotic. These are the ones that like spread through hospitals and spread through communities.
Resistance is a natural phenomenon. I mean, it's not something that just appeared because of our use of antibiotics. Hospitals wouldn't really be able to function without effective antibiotics and strict infection control practices. And that means stringent hand washing and cleaning facilities that become contaminated with certain microbes. So they absolutely have to run an antiseptic environment. Agriculture, for better or worse, has become as dependent on antibiotics too. One, it's very difficult to raise thousands of animals together with all the waste that they produce without increasing their risk to become sick. These animals didn't evolve to live in such concentrated facilities. So the higher the microbial burden of your environment, the more chance there is of you getting sick. And so these animals are more susceptible to getting sick by living in, being raised in these conditions. There are some countries like the Scandinavian countries that are very careful in their use of antibiotics, very judicious in their use, and they have a very low level of use. And their levels of resistance are lower as a result. But many countries have very poor sanitation and hygiene. They live in a very heavy microbial burden, and they use antibiotics as a substitute for sanitation and hygiene. And many of these countries make antibiotics available over the counter. You can buy them off the street, and that worsens the situation for everybody because these microbes spread. So you can have the best practices in some country, but that couldn't be overwhelmed by the lax standards in others. Public demands these things. Doctors are often hard-pressed to deny it. So rather than viewing them as the wonder drug that's going to cure everything, it's, you want to protect your biome. So you have an incentive to try and avoid antibiotics as much as possible.
These bacteria, can expose a lot to a certain kind of antimicrobial resistant to it, they're immediately also resistant to a couple others. You know, they learn kind of similar techniques for being resistant. So once they're resistant to one, even though they're only exposed to one particular, you know, drug or whatever, suddenly they're resistant to a bunch of other things too. So I think a lot of the problem has been, you know, the overuse in livestock for sure, and overuse of you know, prescribing of drugs for unnecessary reasons. But I think the cleaning industry, I don't know that it's been looked at quite as carefully as to how much that is contributing. I think there's been a lot of denial, in fact, on the part of the industry. They're like, oh, our drugs aren't causing any resistance. It's like, well, you know, they definitely showed it, like, it's possible. You know, it's going to lead to resistance in the long run. I mean, there's certainly a lot of these chemicals, trickle-down particularly, incredibly persistent. So you use it on your counter, or you use it in your bathtub, and, you know, you wash it, it goes down the drain, it goes through sewer, and then with the lake. I mean, you know, it sticks around forever, you know. And so there's a lot of chance for it to do harm.
I would caution anybody buying antibacterial soap with antibiotics injected into them. Soap is by nature antibacterial, so you don't need to add antibiotics to a product like soap.
You know, antibiotics are causing resistance in these different bugs, then why wouldn't sanitizers? I mean, it makes sense to me. I don't know for certain. I think that, again, there are places where you want things to be sanitized. I get that. You know, we all wash our hands after we go to the bathroom for a reason, but at the same time, I do think there's something to be said for healthy germs and just being a part of the world without being afraid of everything that's not human.
Organizations and individuals are recognizing this issue and working to create alternate solutions.
I think the future of cleaning is going to be in equipment rather than chemicals. So we're going to see steam become much more important as far as a disinfecting agent. There are machines that you can use in commercial facilities or institutional facilities. You can go into a bathroom and you can just use the steam on it, know that everything's been killed, all the microorganisms have been deactivated, and feel a lot better about not having to use a chemical that you're then inhaling.
There's a lot of research designed to prevent resistance, and it's different strategies for different outcomes. Like, so a lot of times in hospitals, people are worried about just surfaces. And if you can make a surface just antibacterial by itself, you won't have to use all these cleaning products and things like that. Some of it's just sort of quality control and material design. So design materials that bacteria don't like to live on. Design hallways and rooms so that doctors and nurses and whoever will actually use the ethanol things to wash their hands. So that helps stop resistance right there.
Instead of using disinfecting wipes, some of the things that we recommend are just going back to the basics. Soap and water can work just as well for general classroom cleaning.
Yeah, I mean the best is just regular soap. Works incredibly well at removing bacteria.
The actual mechanism of rubbing the soap and water helps lift the dirt, and then when you wipe it, it swipes it away.
I don't believe in the use of broad-spectrum antimicrobials, and we do not make a hand sanitizer. And as you know, the FDA has just banned about 20 ingredients used in hand sanitizers, and for 4 or 5 ingredients has asked for reevaluation of their safety.
Meanwhile, many people get through their day using hand sanitizers, but the question has now arisen: do they actually work?
The FDA finally, came forward with their thing saying, okay, make sure you get a year to prove that these things are any better than soap and water, because we know that they can be harmful, but if you can show us that people are healthier, you can keep them on the market. They sort of audit for the year and basically just like, we can't, we don't have the data.
There's not anything that is really around right now. There is a proposed bill that's going through the legislature that talks about cleaning products that contain hazardous chemicals and just general consumer household cleaning products. If a company is going to sell those products, they have to meet a certain list of requirements.
There's a movement right now that would make Envision mandatory. There's actually a bill in the legislature, and we're hopeful that it's going to pass, if not this year, then next year. The program has really helped, even though it hasn't been mandatory.
Policy and legislation are moving towards more regulation, but in the meantime, it's up to the consumer to take action.
There's a growing awareness in the marketplace of the need for green products and an increasing demand among consumers for our type of products, which is certainly encouraging.
I do think, that a lot of organizations are trying to do that educational piece, and that's what's going to change things. It is important to educate people about what the hazards are and what they can do to protect their health. And that's where I say the third-party certified products, you've got to look for those certifications, do some research. You don't really need a lot of products to clean your house. A lot of people are still using vinegar and water to clean glass, which is, a really time-honored cleaning recipe. Women's Voices for the Earth is a really good website. They have a lot of recipes on there for those people who want to make their own cleaning products. And then the other way is through the Safer Choice logo. So they're looking at retail products, and even some retail products that you can buy in the big box stores might have the Green Seal label or the Eco logo label, and certainly the Safer Choice. So knowing what those third-party certification logos are is really important.
Part of it is adjusting your approach to cleaning. When your goal is not to kill all the germs on a surface, cleaning becomes a whole lot easier.
Right now we have regulations that require frequent disinfecting. It's all about control of infectious disease. Definitely we need to have processes in place that do help with that. I think there's a broader discussion going on right now across the country about what that exactly means. Do we really need to be disinfecting as much as we are?
I think there are a lot of hospitals that are doing some things. I know a lot of hospitals that banned triclosan, fairly early on, where the FDA was taking it out. They saw, greater harms. And I think there's more of an attention towards where do we really need to disinfect. We probably don't need to worry about the floors. We're not doing surgery on the floor. We need to clean the floor. We probably don't need to disinfect the floor.
What we look for when we are advising childcare or schools is a 1-minute dwell time. And there are some products out now that have safer ingredients, such as hydrogen peroxide, accelerated hydrogen peroxide. That's kind of the new generation of disinfectants. And some of them have a 30-second to 1-minute dwell time for most common organisms that we would find in facilities, and that really helps a lot, because 1 minute is not that long. It can stay glistening wet on a surface for 1 minute and actually do its job and not leave, once again, microbes that have not been killed that can then mutate.
With the misuse of antibiotics and the rise of antimicrobial resistance, research is being done to create strategies for the future.
We need to look at what strategies can we implement to be more targeted. And there is one that I'm a strong proponent of, and there was a lot of interest in them in the early 20th century, and that is bacteriophages. And phages are nature's natural foe against bacteria. These are tiny little viruses that attack bacteria, and they've been going tit for tat since, the beginning of life, probably, on the planet. So we should take more advantage of them and make them work for us.
Yeah, the other big strategy is comes when you use sort of the antibiotics or the other antibacterials to treat people, in that if you just treat them all the time with one antibiotic, a resistant bacteria will keep growing. But if you cycle through antibiotics, the chance that the bacterium is resistant to each antibiotic each time you cycle, like every 2 days, is very low. And so a lot of clinical trials are going on where they're doing cycling regimens.
I think the best thing to do is when you are sick is if you're really sick, go to the doctor certainly, but don't demand an antibiotic. If the doctor thinks you have a viral infection, an antibiotic is not going to help because antibiotics do not work against viruses. So if you have a bad cold, an antibiotic is not the answer, and don't demand it or don't go doctor shopping until you find a doctor who will prescribe antibiotics for you, because that might hurt you in the long run more than help you.
Really getting over that cultural thing of like germs are bad. The studies are not showing anybody's healthier. There's one really great study where they actually had 2 different households and they sent them cleaners to use. One had antibacterial stuff and one had non-antibacterial stuff. And then they actually tracked like how many calls you get, how many times you go to the doctor, all those symptoms. It was like, no difference. They just could not find any difference whatsoever.
The One Health, which recognizes that human, animal, and environmental health are linked, promotes the idea that we need to think broadly rather than so narrowly. And so that means that we need to better understand how to live in our microbial world. It's very complicated because you want it to be clean enough so that you're not getting all of these deadly bacterial infections, but you want it dirty enough so that your immune system still has something to do and doesn't start attacking itself out of boredom. So we haven't figured that out yet. And I think that's where medicine has to go to understand, monitoring our biome and figuring out what's the happy balance.
The hygiene hypothesis and the fact that you don't need to kill everything to have a safe environment is becoming a new understanding, and I hope that that grows.
I think the public is definitely becoming more conscious, which is good. People, not just about cleaners, but in terms of what they're putting in their bodies also.
There are so many younger people that are interested in safer products for their families, and they're doing something about it. So we have these campaigns now. Many of the nonprofit organizations have campaigns that they've set up for working to get manufacturers to make safer products, and they have gotten the younger generation who are concerned about these things. They've gotten organized because of social media, so they can run these campaigns, letter writing campaigns, where they really promote transparency. For the longest time, when we talk about retail cleaning products, you might have a bottle that didn't really tell you what ingredients were in it, or if they did tell you, they were on the inside of the label, so you had to use the whole product up before you could read what the ingredients were. Now we have the peel-off labels where they list all of the ingredients, which is definitely a move in the right direction. And then a lot of companies have come out with websites, big companies. Clorox is one, Procter & Gamble, and so you can go to their website and you can find out what the ingredients are. Of course, for most people, it might not really mean much because they don't know what those words mean, what those chemicals are. But people are definitely getting savvier, and they're looking to organizations like the Environmental Working Group. They're going there to find out what's in their product or what might be a safer alternative, or looking at the Safer Choice website. And also Made Safe is another company that looks at retail products. It's exciting to see what the power of the purse can do, the power that we have with our purchasing dollars. If we all decide we are not going to buy this product because we don't know what's in it or something harmful is in it, that's what makes manufacturers pay attention, is when people stop buying their products.
My hope is people will become increasingly aware, and that demand will continue to increase. And it's great that that will help seventh generation grow, but we also hope that it will get other manufacturers to think differently about the way they make their products.